This is K-Squid and Exploring Santa Cruz with your host, Jean Kratzer. I want to introduce to you a very special guest today. His name is Daron Cormachero, and he is a founder and director of a local award-winning nonprofit organization called Food What? Now, I think with just that name, it gives you a bit of a clue to the fact that this is a very unique organization. And so I'm going to turn to Daron and ask him to give us just a brief introduction about Food What, tell us where it is, who it serves, and what its main objectives are. After that, we'll get further into the details. So welcome, Daron.
Thank you, Jean. And thank you, listeners, for joining us on this conversation about Food What. And so what are we? We are a youth empowerment and food justice organization. And at Food What, youth engage in relationships with land, food, and each other in ways that are grounded in love and justice. We provide meaningful space where youth define and cultivate their empowerment and well-being. So where are we? We have 2 site locations. We serve high school teens in Santa Cruz County, and we have 2 farm locations. One is on the UCSC farm, and one is on Live Earth Farm in Watsonville. So we work with high school teens, incredibly resilient teens. We work with teens from different challenging situations. Maybe that's economics, or could be from foster care, or previously homeless youth, or youth who have had intersections with the juvenile justice system. What we find is all of the young people that we work with take full advantage of the opportunities that are available for them by coming to our farm sites, by cooking and eating together, by growing food, by building community. And we see them decide to take advantage of these opportunities, and each young person has a different outcome. So we're very different than, let's say, a tobacco cessation program, where you deliver a curriculum that encourages, let's say, a certain number of people to, or a certain group of people to quit smoking. And then you can evaluate, well, how many people quit smoking? As an empowerment program, we really have an A to infinity impact. Each young person who walks onto the farm and who engages with the land and the food and with the community has a different potential of what they could get out of being at Food What.
Thank you for that introduction. And now I'd like to get a bit more into the details.
Sure.
You have a spring program, a summer program, a fall program, and a winter program. And it's a progression that adds elements as you go along. Starts off with a large number of youth participants, but I'm going to let you describe it.
So we have what we call a graduated leadership model. And unlike a lot of other youth-serving programs that work along the academic year or might start in the summer, we actually follow the farming cycle. So we get going in late February, early March, and we have an 11-week spring program. And we have 5 cohorts of youth that come in groups of anywhere from 12 to 15. And we have 3 groups, 3 cohorts in South County and 2 cohorts in North County. They come for 3 hours once a week. And in those 3 hours, we always start with an icebreaker just to play around, get in our bodies, wake up if we need to. And we do 1 hour of farming and gardening on our farm site, and that's very much for job training. And we do 1 hour of leadership development workshop, and those workshops are different skills or concepts that youth have asked us for over time. So we do a public speaking workshop, we do a resume writing workshop, we do a workshop called Fast Food Jeopardy, we do a workshop called Trace Your Taco, looking at what is a food system by breaking down a taco. And the last hour is the hour that everybody speaks of that is their favorite, is when we cook. So we harvest something from the farm, and we use some other ingredients, and we cook a meal together, and we all sit down and enjoy that meal. We have a beautiful outdoor kitchen, Then we close each day with something called triumphs, and we invite each young person and staff who's present to circle up and offer something that they're proud of for themselves for that day. And so that's the spring program. And this year I believe we hired on in the upper 60s, and we ended with about 64 youth from across the county who successfully completed that program.
It's interesting that you say you hired them. So they're not paying to come to this program.
That's correct. No, one of the first things we realized when we designed the program, which was 13 years ago in 2007, is that it's not even something we realized. It's something that we committed to. We said that we would set what is an appropriate salary for this type of a program. And really, when I say appropriate, it's based on paying the youth as much as we possibly can that's also relevant to other jobs around that they might get at this point in their career. And for many youth we're serving, this is their first job. And so, for example, the first year we had one grant, which was our entire program. And so we were able to pay 5 youth a full salary for the spring and the summer and the fall for their different work.
What does a full salary consist of?
Sure. So in the spring, it starts as an internship. That's our entry point. And youth get 2.5 credits in school, and they get a stipend of $175. And as soon as they complete the spring, they could apply into our hourly paid positions. And right now in the summer, we have 24 youth who are paid $12 an hour. And we have junior staff youth who are paid $12.50 an hour. And then in the fall, it goes up to $12.50 an hour. And so for the young people who are in the program now, over 8 weeks, they'll make around $2,000, which is very competitive with what else is out there. But there's so many other perks. I know that a number of youth, especially in the spring, if you ask them, well, why did you come? And if they're honest, which most of them are with us as staff, they'll say, well, I'm behind in credits. I needed some credits, or to get that paycheck, or just have something to do because I'm bored. But over time, those answers start to change. And as they dig into the program and they start to have their own experiences there, and they start to realize why they're there on their own terms, those answers change dramatically. And really, when we look at what are the impacts of the program, that's a question that I'm sure you'll ask me eventually, so I'll just get to it now. What are the impacts? There are 3 major sets of impacts that we see. The first 2 are very easy to understand. The first one is we see really significant job training attainment. So in many ways, these are young people who might be at a competitive disadvantage in the workforce. They might be struggling in school in some way or having other challenges in their life, and we really balance a playing field by putting all of our energy and all of our resources and all of our attention to support those youth to be as competitive, if not more competitive in some ways, through the core job skills, but also the emotional side. So if a young person, I have this conversation with people in workforce development a lot. Programs that just offer job training and don't take a holistic approach often might be missing the point that if somebody is housing insecure, or they don't have food on the table, or they're a homeless youth, and they're incredibly intelligent and they're incredibly capable and they could show up on time and they could be probably one of the best members of your team possible, but if every day they're moving to a different shelter or trying to find a different place to live or just feeling the pain of that struggle, those things work against each other. And so we don't just do job training in terms of, do you know how to communicate? Can you show up on time? Yes, we do that. Those are core job skills that you and I and everyone listening to this program, we understand. You need to be able to succeed in those baseline skills to succeed in your job. But we also create a safe space or a brave space where youth get to explore their past, push into some of their traumas, a place of healing, a place of building family and community, a place of seeing that they're not alone in whatever experience they may have had, a place where they can see that they're not their past, but they are the strong, capable, amazing person who's here right now. And so job training is one of our key outcomes or impacts, but it's very couched in a whole person approach A second one is really radical diet change. So it's not a mystery to you or to our listeners that if you were to walk into a high school, you're not going to see the overwhelming majority of youth walking around with salads and veggie wraps and all these things. Certainly there are
Probably not.
There are plenty of youth who do, and that's the road they've traveled. But what do we normally see? We see hot Cheetos, we see a lot of Rockstar energy drinks, those types of equivalencies. We see soda, we see a lot of fast food consumption. And this is typical everywhere, not just our county, both sides of the county, but this is just an American diet. And what we do, because we're an empowerment program, we don't do any shaming. We don't tell folks this is bad or don't eat or drink this, because all of our individual relationships with food are very complicated. And we feel like that's not a tack that's going to support a young person into a diet change towards healthy food. And even what do we define as healthy food? There are so many definitions, and we take the most broad, catch-all approach you could imagine. We talk about fresh, vibrant, colorful produce. We talk about whole grains. We talk about consuming water. But we don't preach anything. What we do is we actually live it and we embody it, and we give youth a chance to find their way into healthy food on their own terms. So what does that look like at Food What? That looks like that everyday young person in the spring or the summer, let's say, when they're on the farm, they're farming, and then they're also harvesting, and then they're also cooking, and they're also cooking with their peer group, and often they're bringing food home to their families, or they're doing something with the food. Maybe they're canning and preserving it, or they're running a justice project with a farm stand in a low-income part of town. So one of the magical recipes about Food What, in terms of diet change, is that we're not just speaking to their head, we're giving their whole body a chance to digest this information. We're giving an opportunity for youth to find their way into food from whatever approach resonates best with them. So if they have their hand in every aspect of the food system, it's not just one option, yes or no, or yay or nay, right? There's growing, there's harvesting, there's cooking, there's eating, there's bringing it home to their family, there's working in the community with food, there's working in school gardens. We have so many ways that we intersect with food, and that is really our special sauce. It's not patented. If anyone out there loves that idea, please go ahead and steal it and replicate it and use it. We would support you on that, because it works, and it is unfortunately unique, but it's very effective. And then the third impact is really why we exist, and that is the empowerment. And what does empowerment mean? Personal growth, transformation, agency building, liberation. There's so many different words for what it means to a different youth. And one thing that's come up a lot recently, especially when we talk to funders or other partners or folks like you in the media, is people will often ask myself or our staff, like, how do you empower youth, right? And so that word is used as a verb from one person to another, like how do I empower the youth in the program? And we've been surprising a lot of people over the last few years by saying we don't, which causes a little cognitive dissonance, as we do very much claim we're an empowerment program. But the way that we understand it and the way that we activate empowerment is we create this space, we create really intricate and beautifully complex programming. We create an incredible team, but empowerment is something that a young person chooses for themselves. And even from the moment that we start with youth, when we do outreach in the schools, that youth is choosing to apply. Nobody's mandated to apply. Teachers can't tell them to apply. Parents can't. Anyone could tell them to apply, but ultimately it is their decision. And when they move from program to program, from season to season, they're choosing that. When they finish the spring, we present what the summer job is, and they choose to apply into that and interview for that. And then when we go into our fall program, they choose to apply to that. So this ongoing sense of choice is a big part. But really what we see is, if empowerment is to be lasting,
if empowerment is to be relevant in a young person's life, if empowerment is to truly be liberatory, then it has to be chosen. It can't be imposed. In the same way that there are systems that do impose challenges or oppression or any of the isms, this has to be a choice from within that somebody elects, and we see incredible change. And we are working with...
When you talk about seeing incredible change, can you give us some examples?
Yes, I could give you hundreds of examples, but in the spirit of time, I'll choose a few. We've seen a lot of young women who have been taught or who have internalized to silence their voice, to be confident in their voice and to speak up. And even just to paint a little bit of a picture of that, there was a young woman in the program years ago, and we do a process called Real Talk, where we give each other positives and improvables as a form of feedback on the job. And she'd get a lot of positives, but her improvable every time, which is different than a negative, it's something she could step up into. Her improvable from the rest of the crew, not even from me or the other staff, but from the rest of the youth was, we really want to hear your voice. We wish you would speak up more. We'd love to hear you. She got that positive reinforcement over and over and over, which counteracted a history of silencing. And one of the most beautiful things with her story was months after she finished the program, she texted me. She was at Cabrillo College. And my name is Daron, but most of the youth call me Farmer D. And she texted me. It was right around the holidays. She said, Farmer D, I just want you to know that I did my first presentation at Cabrillo, and I was the one who led the group. I was the one who stepped up and spoke. And to know where she was when she started and where she ended, and to know that that was her choice. There was nothing that any of us could have done to force somebody to speak. That was her choice, and it's lasting. So that's one example. Wow. Another example, there are young people who have come through the program who have decided to get clean after the program. There are young people who have decided to pursue different career paths. I was actually just having a conversation with a young woman who was in the crew recently, and she had some relationship with the juvenile justice system, and she said, I've really realized that I want to be a lawyer. And so we started talking about what does that look like? What's the path to get there? So people come up with their career trajectories there. And a lot of people, we've had a number of youth who have had sexual abuse or trauma in their background. And to realize they're not alone has been a really big narrative for them. To realize that they're not that incident. They're not a victim of that incident, but they're this dynamic, amazing person, and this is something that happened. And how did they keep themselves safe, that they're still here today? That's a victory. That's something we could celebrate. So, we could go on and on. If any of the listeners, if you think of your own story, if there was anything that was empowering in your steps to get to this moment, to listen to this show, I guarantee you there's probably something that's mirrored with a young person.
Do you get comments from the families and the teachers of these young people who are noticing and really feeling all these things that are happening to them?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the teachers, because that's who we're in very close contact with. We work very closely with the COE in Santa Cruz County, with Santa Cruz City Schools, and with Pajaro Valley Unified School District. They've been phenomenal partners, and I just want to thank them for that. We constantly hear from teachers. They're like, whoa, what happened over the summer? This person didn't speak or didn't do this or that before, and now they are, they're present, they're activated, they're passionate. And the funny thing is, truthfully, that young person probably was that all along. It's just where is the moment where we choose to elect sharing that with the world, right? We used to talk about, we serve low-income youth or youth in struggle or this or that, and we've really come to a place where we say we serve very resilient youth. And that speaks to where they're coming from, but it also speaks to where they're going. It speaks to the agency they're going to build. In terms of parents, it's interesting. In some ways, we'd like to be working more with parents, but simultaneously as an empowerment program, it's almost strategically better for us to have a little bit of a distance from the parents so that our relationship with the youth is very clean. I was talking to a funder recently, and she was really challenging some good thoughts by our team of, well, what are the ways we could work more with parents? And I think that's a great growth edge for us as an organization. What I will say is that when parents do end up calling or checking in or coming to our end of the summer dinner, which the youth put on this beautiful dinner on the farm for their parents and their relatives or their boyfriends, girlfriends, friends, whoever, the parents, they often just, even more than what they say, to be honest, they just look happy. As a parent myself, I have a small child, so I'm not at the same developmental place. I have a 5-year-old, but when I see my son thriving, that makes me happy. That brings me a lot of joy, and that brings me a lot of peace. And so I could imagine that as your child gets older, and especially once you move through middle school, I have no idea what that's going to be like, but once you get through middle school and you're in high school, well, at that place in life, you're old enough to make your own decisions, and you're also young enough to still make terrible decisions, and your brain's still developing, and there's a lot of there's just so much going on. So to see that your child has landed in a community of people that really sees them, values them, is honest with them, can give them real, direct, honest feedback when things are going well and when they're not. We don't shy away from our challenging situations on the farm. And ultimately, when they show that they are loving themselves, I would think as a parent of that age individual that that's priceless.
Yes, I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
And talking about meals, because the question of meals has come up repeatedly, I know you do something very special with the chefs, the local chefs. Yeah. Can you explain that part of the program?
Sure. Yeah, we have a lot of special components to the program. One of them is on Tuesdays and Wednesdays in the summer program. So for those 8 weeks, for the majority of those Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we have guest chefs from local restaurants in town. And when I say in town, I actually mean in the county in town.
Right.
I have a county identity, so I should say that. In town in Watsonville and in town in Santa Cruz. So, for example, this week we have Chef Kenny coming from up in the valley from the 1440 Multiversity. Next week we have Cesario Ruiz from My Mom's Mole. Last week we had a man relatively new to town, Ojan, who does a Persian pop-up. We have phenomenal chefs, and what's so cool is that the chefs work with half of the crew while the other half of the crew is working on the farm to cook a meal for the entire crew and all of our staff, and plus the guest chefs, right? What's so cool is that chef, by just being themselves, they're sharing their passion for something. And whether a young person at Food What ever chooses a path down the culinary arts or organic sustainable farming or any kind of farming, it's not really the point. It's more about the passion. And so when Ojan was here last week, he's so passionate. He's sharing about a culture that a lot of the youth we serve haven't had access to before, talking about cuisine in Iran and his childhood. He talked about how when he was younger, he was just trying to figure out what to do with his life and how food became that vehicle for him moving forward. And these are stories that really resonate with, I think they're stories that resonate with anyone. They certainly resonate with the youth in the program. And then we cook and eat a masterful meal, and you can't beat that.
No,
That's just incredible.
Can't.
Yeah.
And they're also cooking meals and taking them home to their families, aren't they? They're
not cooking meals and taking them home. They're bringing home a family CSA. So CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. It's a very it's a very popular relationship with farming and with the land, basically like a magazine subscription. You buy a share in the farm, and every week during the season you get a share of the bounty. Now what we do is we spin it a little bit, where every youth who's employed in the summer program, one of the perks of their job is that they are growing this food, they're cooking with it for themselves at lunch, and then they harvest a share once a week to bring home to their families. So half the crew harvests on Tuesday, half the crew harvests on Wednesday, and they bring this food home. What's really effective about that, and that was a youth idea, by the way, that was not a staff idea. A young person suggested that, and we implemented it. It's phenomenal because a young person who's experiencing diet change on the farm still goes home to whatever food situation is at home. And to be able to bring home produce that they grew themselves and say, hey, let's add more color, let's add more vegetables, or let's add kale into this mix. They have a lot of agency when they do that.
You know, I can't believe it, but our
Time is up.
Our time is just about up.
Yes.
And there's something that I did want to mention. And
Good.
we've only gotten through the spring and the summer. There's
Yeah.
still the fall and the winter.
We'll come back.
But the good part of this is that we're going to have 2 programs
Great.
on Food What. And so the first one is you kind of giving us a general background and explanation.
Yeah.
And then the next one, which will be in a month's time, is with your assistance. We're going to invite some of your youth participants and perhaps some of your staff as well
That'd be
to
wonderful.
come and explain from their point of view what this program is and how it feels to them and the experiences they've had.
Yeah.
So I want to invite our listeners, who I'm sure are already fascinated by what you've said, to come back and listen to the program participants and the program staff on our next program. And just before we leave, if the public is getting very enthusiastic
Sure.
about this and wants to have some kind of participation or assistance for the program, what should they do?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about Food What from where we started today and before our next show, just go to our website, foodwhat.org, and it's exactly what it sounds like, food, F-O-O-D, what, W-H-A-T, no spaces, no nothing, foodwhat.org. Check us out. We'd love to hear what you think, and yeah, tell us what you think about what we talked about today on the show, and see what we're up to. Thank you so much.
so very, very
Yeah,
much.
thanks to you and thanks to the listeners. Appreciate this.
And I'm really looking forward to the next show where we get some more details and information from the people that are in the program.
We'll be back in a month.